on TV.
Yep, so we ended up watching Trese. So Trese is a dark fantasy horror straight from the Philippines, and it came out of nowhere. It was on Netflix like a slab of raw beef. Who writes these things?
Me.
So Trese is a 20-something tasked with stopping the underworld shitting up the human world, as you do. You know, she's just about to handle it with her magics, her friends, and her two gun-toting demon himbo bodyguards. Bless them, they're great. It's 6 episodes long, and here's why we want more.
Apart from the fact it just dropped out of nowhere, looked like it was going to be a bit of anime and then absolutely grabbed our attention by the throat. Yeah, that'd probably be one of it. Yeah, I thought it was spectacular.
It was so random. But yeah, you go through your plus points, Andy.
I was going to go through one of my plus points.
One of your plus points.
Yeah, I think the main thing it did that really grabbed me was it put the characters and the story over the main arc. In a lot of these shows, you've got fairly not that interesting characters and
sometimes it's more about the action, isn't it, as opposed to
it's more the grand theme, the grand idea, rather than the individual people, which doesn't really grab me every time. However, in this one, every episode landed. They had you cared about people, you cared about Trese, you cared about her family, you cared about the humans, everyone. The stakes, when things were very emotive, so you cared about the people as well as the large end of the world stuff, which was great. I really liked that element of it a huge amount.
So the first time I heard about Trese was actually on Facebook, and it was shared. A post was shared by someone, perhaps one of the creators, I'm not quite sure, basically saying, please don't pirate it, please stream it, because we want more Filipino stuff to be made. This is pretty much like the first animated adaptation
first Netflix one, definitely.
Absolutely, like it's a global release, so please watch it. I mean, it's 6 episodes long, it's barely 3 hours. Like, out of all the media, give it a shot. I think if it's like, if I was going to, I don't want this to sound like it's cheapening it or anything. It's like a very violent Batman animated. I would say. What would you say, Andy?
I would say, yeah. I don't think it's unfair to say it's got Batman animated vibes to it, because it has picked up. There are definite threads that it's picked up from all over the place, which I think is very cool. I mean, the one thing I would say, I absolutely loved the Filipino element of it. Specifically the magic. It really showed off, to my minimal understanding, a fairly realistic, set of native mythos and symbolism. So it got, it was definitely a very Filipino anime that just it gave it something new and exciting, as well as a real sense of location. This didn't feel like a generic series set in the Philippines. This
absolutely this
felt like a Philippine story.
Local culture, local mythos that I as a white English woman, I have literally no idea about. So that made me want to look up more stuff. It made me look up the comic that it was based on. I mean, basically, it's amazing to see the support for this comic and this translation into such a great global Netflix quality feature. So volume 1 of the print book was sold out
because
already,
of the release,
likely. But the problem that I had is that they also had an EPUB available, but it was the same price as the print version, which I find no, that's just greedy. You got to have at least a third off, I think, because you don't have to pay for publishing and distribution costs. But also at the end of Trese, there was like a 30-minute making of as well, with the Filipino voice actors, the American voice actors, and everybody had a heritage, which was great. Everybody was connected to it, and I really loved it because that really humanized it for me. Just to see the passion for it and the support for it, it was great.
It was definitely. I was quite. The one thing I was a bit surprised about with the documentary was they got someone new in to voice Trese for the English language version, yet the Filipino language version actress could speak practically perfect English. So I was a little bit,
Who knows?
why not have they do both?
I'm guessing that's something contractual. I don't know what it is.
Or they needed a bigger name or
who
something. But
knows? Exactly.
yeah,
Who knows?
that
Yeah.
struck me. One thing I do know is that this has gone down really well. So, for example, Fangoria and Bloody Disgusting have both rated this. They have said, this is a really good horror animation.
Yeah, and it is grisly. There are bits that do make your toes curl.
It is
It's not
grisly.
sanitized for telly.
I don't think it's, for me personally, my taste. I didn't think it was like excessively grotesque. This I'd put in the solid horror category, but it was
but
also,
it's not Saturday morning cartoons, is it?
Oh, it's not a Saturday morning cartoon, but it was the fact that it worked as a horror in that this wasn't an animation that they bunged some horror onto. This wasn't an animation where they were using the horror as a gory selling point. This was structured like and told as a horror story. And
something that connected with me as well is that you also felt the weariness of it. People were really tired and they were scared. And I thought that conveyed itself very well, actually.
Trese was a very interesting character because she actually felt like a 20-something with literally the weight of the world on her shoulders and this absolute lack of control over her life, but knowledge that she had to do it because otherwise the apocalypse. So I cared about the characters. That also meant that when some of them got whacked, I cared.
Yeah, and people do get waxed. Yeah.
And that I think really worked because the end of the world is such a generic concept that you can do it so badly. Whereas this meant that that there was a personal, you had a stake in the game because you liked the characters beyond the idea of, I don't want everyone to die. There was an actual personal stake.
I think that's why I just tend to have always enjoyed not just Western comics, but comics from outside America and the UK, because I do find stereotypically the comics that I was growing up with, definitely, which is why I went over to manga. There's a lot of Japanese comics that focus very much, as you were saying, on the characters and the feelings and the development, etc. So I just want to see character development. If anything, the action and the background action takes second place, I guess.
That's the thing for me. A lot of the anime that's been coming out has been very big concept, small character, whereas this is big character, big concept. Fun fact that I found out during all this. Do you know what the Filipino word for manga is? It's comic.
With a K. Comic.
With a K. So yeah, it's been adapted from a comic or a manga or a comic with a C, or however you want to do it. It's all good for me. Anyway.
Yeah. So summary is, get on with it.
Just watch it, get it in your eyeballs.
Yeah. Watch the trailer. If you think, it's going to be one of these generic animes that's on Netflix, whatever. It's a step above the rest, I gotta say.
Absolutely deserves a second season, unlike oh yes. Do you run a failing tattoo business in 2013? Did you have a problem that no one else could help with, other than, anyone really? Would you like to have two walking cliches yell at you and each other for 5 days? If so, you probably had Joey Tattoo and Mike Chambers do a refit of your building and explain the glaringly obvious problems with your behavior. Oh my,
oh my gosh. So each time, bless them, I do have warm feelings for this show, but oh dear, it was very, very 2010s.
I live tattoos, I sleep tattoos, I drink tattoos, I'm so tattoo, I changed my last name to Tattoo. Yeah, we get it, Joey.
So each time he said, "Hey, I'm Joey Tattoo. My name's Joey Tattoo," and Andy said, no, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
That really made me laugh.
If you're gonna claim you're called Joey Tattoo, at least have the balls to legally change your name to Joey Tattoo.
Oh dear. So there we go. So we've got what, 6, 8, maybe 8,
9 episodes in the whole thing, and they're all the same.
They blur into one another.
They
So there
really
we
do.
go. Oh dear. So
It was such a rote formula
yeah. Oh,
every single time.
this is
It
on
was
Amazon Prime, by the way. So we've flipped from
yeah.
Netflix now. We're on to
This
Amazon
is on
Prime.
Amazon Prime. It's worth
Yeah,
a watch, if nothing else,
it
but just for
is.
shits and
It
giggles.
is.
Every
It is.
single time they came in, they stated the blindingly obvious, like, you have 1,000 cockroaches loose in this room. You shouldn't tattoo in here.
Yeah, like please get rid of rats and cockroaches before a television crew like come at you.
Maybe if you didn't swear loudly and throw eggs at every potential customer, you'd have more customers. They then hit the building on the head with 100 grand worth of fixtures and fittings, got in some established tattoo artists to give the not so established tattoo artists a crash course in tattooing. Ooh, fantastic, Harriet.
Oh, hey, Harriet.
Hey, Manga Girl. Sorry I wasn't on the comments earlier. And yes, adding it to your watch list. Fantastic. We assume you're talking about the Trese. It was, but going back to Tatto Rescue, it was just, oh my, it was so funny every time.
I've lost my notes again. I'm not doing very well today. Sorry. So
okay.
yeah, like get rid of all the things before. That's a very British attitude, isn't it? Though, like I need to tidy up before guests come round. You know,
Yeah.
but, you know, there's a tidy up and there's a get rid of some cockroaches.
Yeah.
You know, one or the other. But having said all that, having laughed at it and having said, oh dear, it's actually 9 out of 10 quite moving. You know.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, you know, this place is a little untidy. This is like, we're suffering extreme and years-long mental health problems. Please, can you help me? Essentially, that's what
they got a therapist in a couple of times.
And they did, and it was just so important. And you know, seeing these grown men, you know, properly click with what's happening, the sadness, what's happening, feeling those emotions, having the gang support them. You know, everyone's like, mate, you know, you asked me to come join your tattoo parlor, but it's failing and everything that I suggest isn't working. Please, can something change? Else I'm gonna have to go. You know, it's that commitment to each other, not just the job. It's supporting each other. I like how everybody's wagging the finger.
Yeah. Oh, this is his face all the way through it.
It doesn't change.
Does not change. The thing that absolutely got me is when they were focusing on the technical side, because the business side was really so simple, it was just dumb. But when they were talking about the art side, it was absolutely fascinating. When they were talking about the stuff that Joey Tattoo obviously really cared about, which was the tattoos, it was compelling. We wouldn't watch all of this series if it wasn't compelling. It's just that it was also really funny that the production was so squonky, where you could every single show you could hear that where they did some ADR and just absolutely
yeah, very much so. It was very much, these guys were very popular in the year 2000. However, the show was made in what, 2012?
2013.
Maybe it was made in 2012, 13. Either way, like a decade has passed. There are 20 more tattoo shops in your area now you have to compete with. And people just get very stuck in their ways, you know, especially when they've had family trauma, especially when someone has lost the ability to tattoo for whatever reason, suffering cancer. You know, there are these really serious stuff. It's an exercise in swallowing pride, being respectful, because it's not like, you know, everybody's shit. It's like, this is some severe trauma that everybody needs to knock on the head now, and we're here to help you and got your back. So really, it's an exercise in humility as well. So even though I said, you know, we may mock it very gently in production values, actually at its core, it's really quite compelling.
That to me was the most
feel good.
That was to me was the most compelling thing, was because underneath it all there was something brilliant, and I loved the brilliant bits enough to put up with the two cousins obviously yelling each other in a scripted manner.
Exactly.
Anyway,
for the cameras. But yes, and at the end of every episode, it was like, the profits have gone up by X%, and this good thing happened, and this good thing. And I swear to God, every episode we were like, oh, good. Thanks.
It's amazing what you can do with a complete refit and absolute, you know, throwing 100 grand at it. Anyway, talking other things that have 100 grand thrown at them.
Dum dum dum.
Dum dum dum. RuPaul Down Under.
Because all the other series didn't have enough swearing or enough innuendo in them. RuPaul has now gone down under. Get it? And had a season with contestants from both Australia and New Zealand competed for the coveted crown and scepter of all queens down under. Shot in New Zealand because New Zealand happened to have a bit less COVID. So the series is now done and dusted. So what did we think?
Oh boy. I enjoyed it. I think it absolutely showed off another cultural scene, another sort of cultural mores from the drag world. It also, unfortunately, showed off another batch of people are garbage. From all the bigotry and the like. Oh yeah, this is the Australian flavoured bigotry. Oh God, no, stop you. This is the Australian.
Spoiler.
Spoiler.
Sons of Sam had nothing to do with RuPaul, so let's back it
this
up.
is all the Australian flavoured bigotry I had in my life. So I thought that was really, I thought that was incredibly interesting, as always. I think it's going to go down as one of the more controversial shows as well, because they, the Aboriginal contestants were all gone by, I think it was like episode 3 or 4.
So yeah, contestants who were representing, different ethnicities other than white,
especially considering the Aboriginal and Indigenous statuses in those 2 locations. Also, one of the contestants admitted to having done openly admitted to having done blackface and discussed their regretting of having done it, which I thought was,
and then got pulled up by RuPaul about it. So I felt that it was super important, not just that it was discussed behind the scenes, but actually it was brought to the fore.
Absolutely.
And it was very much, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
That was absolutely brilliant.
Which was well and good, but I think it was probably humiliating enough to have something that you absolutely wouldn't do now brought to the fore twice in one episode.
The other really controversial thing for me was Art Simone. What was that even all about?
So you said that Art Simone is a big name in Oz drag. So
yes,
Art Simone was out after episode 3, maybe.
No, Art Simone was there were,
and then an episode or 2 later got brought back
for
no reason.
We
have not been able to find a reason why Art Simone is back. I think it was because Art Simone is a bit of a bitchy gossip, and maybe
they lost. They got hooked off.
More drama. I don't know.
I'm thoroughly aware they were a huge name in Australian drag. Sorry, they are still a huge name in Australian drag. They haven't stopped being a huge name in Australian drag, but they're very well established. They've done a whole bunch of national ad campaigns and all that, and they came back and there was no reason for it. None was given. They were just back. If you're booted, you're gone.
Yeah, and I don't know that the bring back has been happening for a long time. Yeah, but it happened. So what you were also angry was about, well, not angry, you were really pleased to see Auntie Donna.
I was really excited for Auntie Donna, and they were told they were going to be there as judges, and then they weren't. They literally turned up, did 2 minutes of skit, and buggered off.
So I think there was some misinformation or rumor or whatever. But basically, you have some celebs at the start for the mini challenges and the maxi challenges, and they, it's the celebs that say what the mini or maxi challenge is. That's what happened. But
I'm just not feeling them. The celeb drop-ins just felt incredibly.
But do you think
we can get a name here? That's it.
That's a COVID thing, though. Do you think it was filmed? Another Drag Race series was filmed through COVID.
I think they over like Taiti Tiki was supposed to be there as a judge, and they weren't. And
they were on video, but again, it was because of COVID.
Yeah, they were there. I just don't think this season. I just think the celebrity drop-ins were just gratuitous. But
possibly, but I was very moved actually. Yeah, towards the end as well. It was very emotional.
It got very emotional, especially with me yelling every time Art Simone didn't get thrown out. It
was what Andy was about to just rage quit watching it, I think, and I was like, well, I'm still watching it. That's fine. Then he came back because you can't get away from it. So basically, yeah, I was very moved, and I found it's quite fascinating as a Brit that grew up with neighbours, the whole Kylie and Jason and Danny Minogue, late 80s, early 90s Australian culture. So it's kind of exotic in the sense that it's like Australian culture that stretches into this non-exotic UK culture. You know, Olivia Newton-John, who we know from Greece,
Oh
Kylie
God.
Minogue. You know, it's very moving, I felt. And there was one of the dance offs that was to Better the Devil You Know, maybe very an older Kylie song, and I was like, oh my heart, you know. And then I was just over flooded with emotions, like, you know, I didn't know anybody who was trans other than, you know, or dressed up differently, other than pantomime dames. Oh, I was very overwhelmed with emotion, thinking, how about how good it must be for, like, you know, 12-year-olds today who get to see on, you know, main.
There was also
Yeah,
I thought there was also quite a bit of body diversity in this
there was
show,
actually, yeah, there were a lot of big
which I think
queens as
again
well
is
as
good.
skinny queens. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
old queens,
absolutely.
young queens, all the queens.
Muscly tall queens as
But yeah,
well.
but yeah.
So the next one's something that we just finished watching last night.
Oh, literally, yeah, we absolutely.
So this only came on Netflix last week, I think.
So Netflix continues its journey through the classic murderous bastards of America. This time, 1970s Son of Sam killings. First episodes covered the killings and the capture of the arsehole that claims to have done it. Episodes 2. Oh, here we go. It wasn't my favorite. As some would say, it was a choice.
Yeah.
There's tea. There's tea on that.
Yes. No spoilers regards the actual win. Because there will have been some viewers who are watching this that haven't seen Drag Race just yet. But I was surprised. I was quite happy, surprised. But yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely more vulgar, but that's Australia for you. Anyway, back to the death.
Yeah, that's true. It wouldn't be a super fortress if we didn't talk about murder.
Murder. Well, that's because Netflix keeps on throwing up real dramas. I mean, we finished watching this, and then straight afterwards, it just went, "Hey, we just dropped the Son of Sam. Would you like to know about Lee Otis? Lee Otis, the confession killer?" And it's just like, "Oh, what, the guy who clocked up 300? My God!" Anyway, episode 2 onwards, it's more about the journey of journalist Murray Terry, who kept on asking the questions, what if more than one dickhead? And that was it was the long tail of the inquiry and the were there more than one person involvedness. It was about 4 hours in total. What did you think?
Yeah, so it's like 1 hour is quite long these days per episode. We're kind of used to about 45, 50 minutes, I guess. But the pacing is quite good. It doesn't really let up. It's always fascinating to see, like, the US TV footage, and there is a change at the start of these killings where it's like, this pretty blonde lady was found completely eviscerated, blah blah blah, until they go, you know, there's a murder and it's a bit more respectful finally. That's, you know, this covers a number of years. And it's very localized. It just gives us that 80s regional station setup localization. I felt that it just got really visceral and uncomfortable by about halfway through, but then they changed the pacing to Maury, covering on Maury. Because there's one very sad, I mean, they're all sad, don't get me wrong, but there's one particularly vile murder in a church, which is...
That was horrific.
Which is really... It's concluded, actually, at the end of the series, so it's worth watching. This poor woman... but yeah, you could see the tone change, almost like, oh, another pretty blonde woman's dead, to like, this person keeps on killing people.
There's almost, because we now watched a number of these, and either it's because with these things you've always got to remember there is a selective editing process. So
hang on, are you talking about the editing process of the modern series, or the editing process?
The editing process of the modern, the editing process in the modern series. So, as a very simple example, this series does side with Murray's theories. So it is edited towards like you said, it's edited towards favoring his version of events. But I will give this one absolute credit. It does offer alternative theories as to what could have happened, including very simple political haymaking, like minor people aren't dying, so there's everything's solved, police negligence. And a lot of people go, no, he's wrong. It was just one guy. We've got all this evidence. So it did try and present a balanced one. But with the editing process, either that it is often presented as almost this idea there's an acceptable number of pretty young ladies you can kill before you stop being exciting and exotic and become a murderous animal, which I find fascinating.
It was kind of depressing as well, but it was
Yeah.
also a bit of a relief when that coverage style just kind of stopped. I mean,
Yeah.
all press have always done it. When kids go missing, it's always the little blonde girls and all that jazz. Let alone the thousands of other ethnic minority kids of whatever gender go missing every hour of every day. It's always the pretty little girls that get coverage. It's so gross. And
It
it's to
is.
sell papers. It's just
And they
to sell
do
papers.
they do highlight it in this that the press coverage was sensationalist to create fear, to get people to buy more product. The other thing it did, which I thought was really interesting from a personal viewpoint, was it covered how this fell into the satanic panic, and it covered the background of things like the Manson family, Scientology, and the impact of Scientology on the American occult scene. For various reasons, it touched on the process church. Yeah,
the Scientology coverage is often not covered, even though it had.
But they did show how it had impacted the scene there. It gives additional context as to why people were worried and how a conspiracy of Satanists going around killing people could be thought to exist. So it gave an insight into why the 80s satanic panic occurred and what was happening in the 70s to feed into that. It also, I thought, very interesting. You had this guy, the guy Murray Terry, came up with a relatively modest theory that instead of one guy being an asshole, there could be a bunch of people being an asshole.
Yeah, who'd have thought?
And like maybe a couple hundred people up and down the country being total jerks because there's a lot of losers out there.
Yeah.
And then he's sitting there with people who think there are like 2 million active Satanists trying to bring around the end of America, and they're the judges, they're the school teachers, the absolute lunatics. And you can see his face just go, no, I'm saying that people with shit all in their life do stupid things.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly interesting.
It was, wasn't it?
From my viewpoint, though, I'm with these things, I'm always very aware of the editing process. And in this one, it's like, yes, it presents a very compelling argument, but there's also a compelling alternative argument that the guy who did it was practically a compulsive liar, was a murderer. A lot of the leads he gave to the journalists could have just been absolute nonsense. But they do try and balance that out, which I've got to give it props for. It makes a compelling story.
It's a bit chicken and egg, though, isn't it? It's, having someone saying there might be a couple of people Satanists who are practicing, Satanists who also happen to murder, and then Maury, as he said, is like there's expected to be estimated 1 million Satanists or whatever, thousands and thousands. That's not what he said. It's quite fascinating today as well, considering how many people play Dungeons and Dragons, and I bet they're absolutely not aware of any of this satanic panic that
it had that legendary Dungeons and Dragons. The game process involves actual satanic rituals, and I'm like, oh, that's a classic one.
Yeah.
All I'm saying with these, as always, is they're great fun to watch. They're very informative as to how the public were acting at the time, but always treat these things with a touch of caution. Don't get too dragged into it.
Yeah.
And go with counter sources.
So related to this, we watched the Night Killer TV series on Netflix. So we covered that in a previous episode. And also there's a film starring Jake Gyllenhaal, aka Donnie Darko, the Zodiac Killer. So that's on Netflix as well. And it similarly covers an obsessive reporter you know, his intrepidness, you know, he becomes obsessed with the story, but everybody just goes a little bit bananas, not being able to get all the ducks in a row to help proceed.
Because there's a bastard going around killing people, and I don't have a problem with reporters trying to find bastards.
Yeah,
That's not fun.
yeah, it's all just a bit of a shame, isn't it? And it's, as I've said before in previous episodes, it's always fascinating to watch these kind of shows because the technology exists now that this sort of shit wouldn't be gotten away with.
Yeah.